You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about sports in the state of Michigan?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media, the show that provides research and statistics about all the Detroit and Michigan sports teams, whether fans like it or not, and detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts and truth that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no slappiness, no coddling, no pop culture, no conspiracy theories, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast.com. Follow us on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and like and share our verified Facebook page, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Also listen to us on Spreaker, CastBox, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast via iTunes, and Spotify, and like Stables Media on Facebook. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them. And it is for every sports fan's own good because the truth is out there. And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast Primetime Edition on Stables Media. I'm Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith and Frank Vashner. It's time for our opening statement. First we'll go to Ed and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, what is your opening statement on the week that was last week?
My opening statement is that it's a yet another Thanksgiving, a yet another Lions disappointment. And while they did the right step in getting rid of Quinn-Tricia, they still need to do more, and I'll explain more later on.
Awesome. Frank, your opening statement.
If you were a fan of the Michigan State Spartans, the Thanksgiving weekend was definitely a good one for you. Football seemingly got up off the mat and knocked off the 8th best team in the country. Basketball's off to an unbeaten start, especially after last night's win over Duke at Cameron. It's always tough to win there, even with no fans. And also, the hockey team won too. So, if you're a fan of green and white, it was a good weekend for you.
Oh, yes. My opening statement, Michigan Wolverines basketball is better than Michigan football, I guess. So those are all examples of what we're going to talk about, plus Pistons and a little bit of Tigers as well. Before we get started, we want to remind everyone to download the all-new social sports app called VigIt, which influences more and more people to love sports. Enter the referral code STABLES with a capital S and a letter B in the middle. Download the VigIt app and sign up with the referral code STABLES with a capital S and the letter B in the middle. Available on the App Store, on Apple, and Google Play. So let's get to it. Lions, like Ed mentioned, they lost 41-25 to the Houston Texans. Houston scored like 41 unanswered, I guess. That's what I heard a few days ago, but that was like a rout. Lions costly turnovers early after they took the lead on their first possession. A pick six to J.J. Watt when Stafford was trying to throw through traffic, and then 2 fumbles, one of them costly. The other one bailed out by a Texans lost fumble, and then Desmond Trufant was decent only for making one awesome pass breakup play, but he still couldn't cut back on dumb penalties. He's now on the IR, by the way, along with Danny Shelton. I'll point out their injuries later on, but the rest of their secondary was nowhere, as always. The offensive line was obviously average, but Stafford, as usual, didn't scramble out of the pocket much, and Adrian Peterson had a couple nice runs for 19 and 11 yards separately, along with 2 touchdowns, each from a yard out. Now, as we go to Ed and Frank, the truth is, I said on Periscope at Michigan_Truth that it was a question of when they were going to fire Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, and not if. And they did it. But Darrell Bevell is going to be the interim head coach, their current offensive coordinator. But that's okay because the Lions are pretty much out of it. Now they can only tank for the best draft pick they can get. So, Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, first and foremost for the game itself, it was seemingly a reoccurring theme for this season in regards to this team, not just the offense, but the team itself. You have a hot start with the first couple opening drives, move the ball downfield, they scored a touchdown, everything's looking good, you even got a couple stops on defense, and then the wheels fall off, giving up multiple unanswered scores by the Houston Texans. I get it. Deshaun Watson, he has proven that he is the future of this league, and he really showed out for a reason, as I predicted he would last week. But man, at some point you got to wonder, as a defense, can you get a stop on third down? Can you get off the field? Can you not look inept out there? Can you make a tackle, for goodness sake? That was one reason why Houston got the 41 points that they did, is because it seemed like everyone was consistently out of position out there. And granted, some of that is on the players, but most of it has got to be on the coaching. If the coaches are not knowing what to do with how to put their players out there, put them in the best spots, then that's another reason why Patricia deserved to get canned, and rightfully so. As for the defense, another reason why Houston got those 41 points was another thing, another consistent theme: turnovers. Same old mistakes that the Lions were consistently making. The fumbles, the fumbleitis that we saw out there was just so aggravating. I think it was at least 12 points or so, if not more, alone, that Houston had gotten on points off of turnovers. I may be more, I may be mistaken, but that was just a consistent theme that I saw throughout, and was one big reason why the score was so lopsided. The offense consistently sputtering, like I mentioned before, from the first quarter, just not doing anything when they got close enough. Aside from Adrian Peterson doing what he had to do, everything else was just at a standstill. Stafford not showing up enough movability, as you mentioned earlier, Taylor. And again, I just think it's at a point to where, what else can we see from Stafford? We've seen everything that we have seen, and at this point, knowing his career has been essentially wasted, drastic measures maybe soon have to be taken, and I'll get that later on in the show. But it was just bad all around. And like you mentioned, Taylor, I was wondering when, not if, but when were they going to fire Patricia at the rate this things kept going. A part of me was wondering, were they going to do what they did to Steve Mariucci? And it turns out that they did. And for once, I will actually give credit to the Ford family, or at least to Sheila Ford, for recognizing and realizing, as you saw in her face at that photo of her in the box set, in the box suite, as it showed on Twitter. She had to make this decision, and it would be so foolish and asinine if Patricia was allowed to go one more day, let alone a week, with his job. And since Quinn was tied to the hip with him, he had to go too. So credit to Sheila Foreham for making this decision. It should have been made last year. You can argue it should have been made 2 years ago. Hell, you can even make an argument that it should have been made 3 years ago after the disaster of the game on Monday Night Football. But the right decision was finally made. Quinn-Tricia is gone. I don't know if you want to have any optimism to look forward to the next regime. But first things first, that's one step out the way. But more drastic and possible painful ones still need to be taken.
In other words, better late than never. Frank, follow up.
Well, all I can say is death, taxes, and the Lions getting destroyed on Thanksgiving. Ed pretty much summed it all up. It was poor play from Matt Stafford, who I think has emotionally checked out. He can't really show what he can do anymore. It's a shame that his best years have been wasted, because I think highly of Stafford, not just as a person, but as a player as well. And also Adrian Peterson, the only one on the offense that seemed to show up. And defensively, just poor play altogether. And as for the firing of Quinn-Tricia, while I am grateful that it did happen, and not a moment too soon, this should have happened a lot sooner if we're going to be honest with ourselves. This team was a disaster last year, and when Martha Ford was still calling the shots, Sheila was the one who was advising her, and she may or may not have said they should get another year. And then I think she kind of realized on Thanksgiving, as we saw her reaction, that she had made a huge mistake and had to fix it. That was the first step. Now, as for what happens with the future of this team, I really don't know. I know there's names out there to come in as a head coach. I have my wishes as well and dream scenarios, but we all have to keep things in perspective here. We don't even know who the GM of this team is going to be. Whoever the GM ends up being, that's really going to be an indication. And it also needs to be made known that having Rod Wood in charge of football operations, when, if you guys will remember, back on November 20th, 2015...
And they retained him, by the way.
Yeah, which was around the time that Tom Milan and Martin Mayhew were whacked by Martha. Rod Wood took over as team president, and the words out of his mouth were, and I quote, "I'm not a football guy."
Oops.
And if you would happen to look on the Lions website,
Well,
you will see that he is now in charge of football operations.
Oh, my
Does that
God.
not seem disturbing to you guys?
it's just another example of how inept this entire family has been in owning this team for going on how many years now? So it's just not a surprise. It's just another enduring, embarrassing chapter.
Ed, if you could only see my shocked face right now.
Oh, plus, trust me, it was my shocked face whenever I saw them losing another game on Thanksgiving this year. Please.
Yeah, and they retained Rod Wood while promoting Darryl Bevell, their offensive coordinator, as interim coach. But that won't last long. It only lasts till the end of the season. Quinn and Patricia, the most important thing, are gone. This Sunday, the Lions go to Soldier Field and take on the Bears. The Chicago Bears, that is, Sunday at 1 on Fox. Like I mentioned before, Desmond Trufant and Danny Shelton are on the IR. Trufant has a hamstring injury, like I promised, and Danny Shelton with a knee injury. So let's go to our Lions-Bears analysis and the Viget predicted score. Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, go ahead.
Well, not just to mention with the fact that Desmond Trufant is going to be out with his injury. You know, obviously, you guys see how Stafford is going to look. He's listed as questionable, but more than likely he's going to try to tough it out. That's probably another factor. You know, you don't want to talk about it. It's like you don't want to lean on it as a crutch of an excuse, but you got to wonder if that may be another reason why Stafford has been inefficient. Another injury to his throwing hand that is causing, skips into some inadequacies with his game. Again, you don't want it to be excused, but you got to call a spade for what it is. He's questionable, but we'll see how it does for his overall performance. But guess what? No Jeff Okudah and no Desmond Trufant. Oh, my goodness. You thought the secondary was bad before. Look what they're going to try to trot out now. No Demi Amendola. You're going to probably get Kenny Galladay back and DeAndre Swift, thankfully. But I don't know what it's going to do for your offense. I mean, if Khalil Mack is still out there, you really think it's going to do a damn against Chicago? And I know they're on a backup quarterback, but come on, we've seen lesser quality quarterbacks torch up this Lions defense before. Do you think you're not going to see the same thing happen here? So my Big Ed predicted score, knowing how things have been going, knowing that this defense can't get a stop on third down, knowing that this offense has been bound to sputter and struggle out of nowhere, I'm going to predict, since at this point the playoffs are out of the question, Bears 31, Detroit 20.
All right. Good Viget predicted score. As always, the Viget predicted score is also brought to you by Viget, referral code Stables with a capital S and a letter B in the middle. Frank, go ahead.
Well, obviously with Okudah and Trufant out, that's really going to pose a much more favorable matchup for Bears quarterback Mitchell Trubisky, who I believe is now back starting after Nick Foles is out for the year. But of course, as I'd mentioned, we've seen subpar Bears quarterbacks torch the Lions before. Heck, we saw it in week 1, if I'm not mistaken, where Trubisky seemingly out of nowhere just looked like Tom Brady, and he ended up leading the Bears to a win in week 1. This time around, it's a lot different. Lions obviously missing some guys. I know DeAndre Swift is going to be back, and probably Kenny Galladay as well. But, of course, this offense way too inconsistent for my liking. The Bears, I don't know how much they're going to score either. I don't even think they're into it as well. So my Viget predicted score is going to be, I'll go Bears 24, Lions 13.
I'm going to go with the Chicago Bears 38 and the Lions 10. The Lions are going to get smoked. Not only has Okudah developed, he hasn't been able to stay healthy, but man, the rest of the secondary defense stinks, and so does their defensive line. Their offensive line did an average job on Thanksgiving at least, but man, I just don't think that's good enough either. The Bears are going to smash the Lions 38-17. That's my Viget predicted score. Again, the Viget predicted score is brought to you by Viget, referral code Stables. So let's transition to college football. The Michigan State Spartans winning 29-20 over the 8th-ranked team in the country, like Frank mentioned, the Northwestern Wildcats. Here's the analysis. The Spartans jumped out to a 17-0 lead, blew it, but tied it back up at 20 and took a 23-20 lead on Coughlin's 2 tying and go-ahead field goals before putting icing on the cake with a defensive touchdown fumble recovery in the end zone as time expired. Rocky Lombardi obviously didn't do too shabby, 11 of 27 for 167 passing yards, which is not very high, but not very low either. 2 touchdown passes and just 1 interception. The defense was great for at least 3 quarters until that 17-0 lead relinquishment. So we're going to turn it over to Ed and then Frank. Ed, got to be impressed, whether you like it or not, by those Spartans, huh?
Oh, very much so. Like you mentioned, specifically with Rocky Lombardi, I saw a couple of his some of his work, what he did out there. Again, the numbers were not exactly flashy, but he stepped up and delivered in moments and made the big throws when he needed to. Like with his first touchdown pass, or whether it be on a key third down, or even making plays with his legs as well. Lombardi was just consistent enough, and he wasn't too careless with the ball. He only had one turnover. He only had one interception. He's getting much better. I remember one game he had 5, so he's doing much better in terms of taking care of the football. That's good. That's needed improvement that you need to see from your starting quarterback. It shows that he's taking this seriously, and he wants to at least keep his job. Now, while yes, there is a need of focus on the blown 17-point lead in the fourth, I think it's still worth a mention to talk about the job that the defense did in those first 3 quarters. It was very reminiscent of what we would have saw back in the days of D'Antonio, where the defense plays stingy, plays nasty. It looked as nasty as those alternative state uniforms, but they let you know how good of a job that your defense was doing overall. When you hold a team, the number 8 team in the nation, a team that had not only just Big Ten championship aspirations, but possible playoff aspirations as well. When you held them to 0 points for the majority of the game, and yes, while you give up a lead, you still come up big in moments when you need it the most to help set yourself up for a win and eventually seal it on a last-second touchdown, which, since we mentioned our sponsor, Vicket, I'm sure those that used our Vicket app was very much pleased by how the very last play of that game ended. But still, between that and knowing this was just flat out a much-needed win. When you consider the fact this was essentially a game after their game got canceled last week due to COVID-related concerns. So it was essentially an extra bye week that they got. It was a well-needed one, because after the blowouts that they had gotten from back to back and how it's been so long since their lone win against Michigan, this was a very, very much needed victory for Mel Tucker as he gets through the rough patches, the rough side, of his first year and sees the better days on the horizon. So terrific team effort all around. Offense made plays when they needed to make plays. Defense stepped up, and much needed win for Mel Tucker. Good job all around for Michigan State.
Definitely. Frank, celebrate on, but be fair.
If you would have told me that Michigan State would be able to have more takeaways than giveaways against the 8th-ranked team in the country, much less win that game, I probably would have asked you for winning lottery numbers. All kidding aside, this was definitely that get up off the mat and show that, hey, we have had our bad luck this year. We've lost games. The 2 previous games, they ended up only scoring a combined 7 points, which was against Iowa and Indiana. And now they show us that, hey, you know what? We've still got a season to play. And Rocky Lombardi, for as much grief as I may have given him in the past for his play and saying that he needed to be benched, you know what? I'm going to give him credit here. He could have easily just packed up his stuff and said, you know what, I'm transferring after getting benched. No. He put his head down, went to work in practice, and granted, he didn't put up spectacular numbers, but he did enough to win. He took care of the football. That's a step in the right direction for me, and he showed that he can be a leader too. Taking off and running when he couldn't find anybody open, getting the first downs, that's a different side of Rocky, and I love it. Especially since they even mentioned that he was a state champion wrestler as well. I think him having that mindset in the game showed what he is made of. So, all in all, I thought it was a much-needed win for Michigan State and Mel Tucker. Gets him a signature win. And, of course, those of you who use the Viget app, if you took the over in that game, which, if you did, props to you, because I believe the over-under at start was 41.5. I know I was kind of leaning under because I figured this would be a lot more scoring, but swung and missed, so if you took the over, good job.
Yep. Same winning value as picking the right team to win, right? 100 points, right?
I believe so.
Yep, that's what I looked at on the Viget app on my phone. So the Spartans, they're still scheduled to play the Ohio State Buckeyes at Spartan Stadium. Ryan Day, their head coach, will not be there because he has tested positive for COVID-19. But I think the rest of the team, including the rest of the coaches and all the players nowadays, are COVID-free. That's going to start Saturday at noon, I think.
Yes,
that's
noon on ABC.
All right. So we're going to go to Ed and then Frank. Ed, just the analysis and the Viget predicted score. Go ahead.
My analysis could be that OSU, as much as it's tempting to look at this as a trap game, They should not. I know it's easy to look ahead to next week of imagining what you're going to do to Michigan, but first things first, there's still business to take care of here, and I believe OSU has been coached and disciplined well enough to know that, hey, especially knowing that MSU is coming off a win, so they're going to be feeling on a bit of an emotional high. This will not be as easy as some are expecting it to be. I think, again, MSU's defense, they're going to be stingy. They're going to show out. They're going to be as vigilant and resilient as possible. But again, at the end of the day, Ohio State's talent in offense and athleticism and just flat out everything else, it's just too much. I actually don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think this game's going to be much closer than expected. MSU's going to play them tough. But eventually, Justin Fields and that offense and just those freaks on the Buckeyes, they're going to find a way, and they're just going to just pull away late. And my Viget predicted score is going to be OSU 39, MSU 16.
All right, that's a good one. Frank, how about you? Your turn.
Well, look, I know Ryan Day isn't going to be on Ohio State's sidelines, but you know who is going to be there? Justin Fields, who is the best quarterback in the country, not named Trevor Lawrence. Now, granted, I'm sure that Ryan Day has told all his players and coaches virtually, I assume, said, hey, this isn't a game to overlook because there's been times in the past where Michigan State has risen up and knocked off Ohio State when they were unbeaten and ranked in the top 5. See 2015 or 1998 for that matter. And look, I know Rocky Lombardi played well last week. I want to see if that can continue, if Michigan State can make some plays on the offensive side. I just think Ohio State's going to be too much, and I think Ohio State will probably jump out to a fairly large lead before they end up deciding to call off the dogs. I'm going to go Ohio State 38, Michigan State 17, although the Michigan State scores will come later. That score is presented by the Viget app.
All right. My Viget predicted score would be Ohio State 41, Michigan State 12. I know Ryan Day's not there, but the rest of the coaching staff can develop their players, including Justin Fields, who is, as Frank pointed out, technically the second best quarterback in the country behind Trevor Lawrence. The offense will be too much, and so will the defense. Ohio State's ranked 4th in the AP poll rankings and probably the college football playoff rankings as well. 41-12 Buckeyes. That's my Viget predicted score. Now to the Michigan Wolverines. They lost 27-17 to the Penn State Nittany Lions at home. The Penn State Nittany Lions were winless, 0-5 going in, but the offensive line was weak for Michigan, so was the play calling, so neither McNamara nor Milton could deliver much under center. And then after the game, Jim Harbaugh, their head coach, says he saw improvement in several areas of the game, which I find hard to believe. There's another weekly Michigan Wolverines football lie of the week. That was courtesy of an article from CBS Sports. Wow. So, Ed, this aggravates you, so get that off your chest, please.
My goodness, as if I didn't have to stomach through the Lions sticking it up the joint on Thanksgiving. Now I had to sit here and watch this. The same old mistakes that we've seen constantly game in and game out. First and foremost with the defense. Have they ever heard of a quarterback spy? Have they ever heard of a zone contain? How in the world was Sean Clifton be able to run around looking like some type of all-world scrambler when he's getting breaks, he's getting busted plays, he's getting first down conversions, he even got a touchdown, for goodness sake. Okay, so there's that. So there was also the fact that the secondary, once again, looked absolutely dreadful, not being able to get a stop. Everyone seemingly on defense forgetting how the proper fundamentals on how to wrap up and actually tackle someone. They were just trying to hit, and not tackling, which led to more gains and yards and receptions after catch, after contact for Penn State, which kept those drives going, which led to those points. As for Michigan's offense, the mistakes such as somehow not converting a 4th and 2 when you saw how well Hassan Haskins has been running all year, particularly in this game as well. And frankly, as for Haskins, he was practically the lone bright spot for this team, at least on the offensive side of things, while the rest of the offense just continued to completely sputter out. McNamara or Milton just flat out looked like guys out there. They didn't have zero virtually no impact on the game compared to what they, at least McNamara's case last week. Milton, with his big body, somehow not being able to get 1 yard on the fourth down, that's absolutely baffling to me. As for the defense itself, I don't know if, like we mentioned, of how the players just checked out on Patricia. Have they checked out on Don Brown? And by extension, have they checked out on Harbaugh? That's still yet to remain to be seen. But I do predict that Don Brown will be gone at year's end. It just reminds me, you know how it was with Gunter Cunningham with the Lions, of how first couple of years he started out good. He had the players, he had the schemes, everything was going well. But then slowly but surely they figured him out. They knew when to attack here, drop off there, and they ended up scoring points and gaining yards. It's just the same thing we're having here with Don Brown. They figured out this defense. They know the talent's not there, and they know that the inexperience has caught up to that secondary, to where that if you're not getting at least an adequate pass rush, they're going to get picked apart. And that's exactly what we saw in this game. That's what we saw all season. And for an 0-5 football team, a winless football team, to get their first win off of you in your backyard, that's just a microcosm of your season in a nutshell. And to me, I think this whole thing with having to pause operations briefly due to COVID concerns could not have been any more perfect timing, because it gives you a chance to sit down and sort things out of really what is your next step moving forward? What is your long-term step after this season? Because obviously changes have got to be made. And I'm talking not just at one spot. I'm talking several spots. I'm talking a flat-out culture. Urban Meyer said you're going to have to blow things up, and you know what? I agree with him. Between Don Brown, Harbaugh, everything else, even John Gaddis, if even he is not completely safe. If things are not improving from what we've seen here, then all things need to be considered in terms of a flat-out reboot culture shift.
Yeah, absolutely. Frank, what say you on this?
I'm not entirely surprised that Penn State ended up winning the game. I knew they were winless, but at the same time, I also looked at the fact that in a lot of their losses, they had turned the ball over way too many times, and I thought, you know what? I think this Penn State team is better than their record shows. That said, you still allowed a winless team to get their first win, and you looked like you didn't even care at times, offensively or defensively. And I still wonder, how the hell does Don Brown collect a paycheck when he should have been fired after the debacle against Ohio State in 2018? Oh, wait. There was a certain former Michigan player, who Ed knows who I'm talking about, who was trying to say, oh, it was just a mirage. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Then he suffered the same fate at home last year.
Exactly.
Against Ohio State.
The continuing pattern, vicious cycle.
I am not done yet, boys. The fact that Harbaugh has refused to make changes to his staff. Oh, wait. He did make some changes when some of his assistants bolted for Ohio State, looking at Al Washington, Greg Madison, who were actually quality assistants. They didn't get fired. They left on their own for the rival. And if that's not a huge indictment on Harbaugh, I don't know what is. Now, he's not going to get fired. I don't believe that. If anything, he'll walk away on his own. But keep this in mind, guys. What if Ward Manuel decides to offer him a short-term extension? I mean, maybe there may be some sort of pay cut in there where he's not making as much money. I'm just speculating. But he also has to clean out his entire staff. That means Gaddis, Brown, everybody, adios, or there's the door, don't let it hit you on the rear end on the way out.
Or GTFO.
So, yeah. And speaking of that, Taylor, I'd like to mention this too. Ed mentioned how Harbaugh mentioned he sees improvement. Improvement in what?
Well,
I'm not seeing any improvement.
He didn't say any areas.
Improvement in not giving up 40 points this weekend?
Yeah. Oh, and let me
improvement in what? And maybe improvement in not giving up 400 yards of total offense?
I know one improvement. Jake Moody actually finally hit a field goal. He was 1 for 1 in field goal attempts.
There you go.
Oh, let me throw this out
40 yards out.
You guys. And this is something that really upsets me personally. Harbaugh says that people are too results-oriented. He said this in response to a question that Angelique Shengelis asked at the presser. He said, everybody looks at results when it's the process you got to go through. Excuse me? Who do you think you are? You're not in the situation of you're in your first or second year at a program saying, oh, we've got to go through the process.
You're in year 6, dude.
Yes, exactly, Ed. They are in year 6. You don't get to talk about the process. And people will point out to me, because I happen to have utmost respect for Matt Campbell, they'll say, well, Matt Campbell talks about the process a lot because Matt Campbell's process actually gets results. He actually wins big games against big-time schools like Oklahoma and Texas. And you proceedingly get your ass kicked. So you want to say, oh, you should look at results, look at the process? GT to the F-O, James. You don't get to talk about that. You're in year 6. To me, that's him saying, I give up. He looks beat. And, I know the game against Maryland has been canceled due to COVID. I'm starting to think that, and I know Kirk Herbstreit mentioned this last night on ESPN, I'm starting to think that the game against Ohio State may possibly be canceled as well. Not saying not claiming this to be gospel or anything, but it's just a feeling I have. So if the game against Ohio State gets canceled next week, I will not be surprised at all.
And frankly, would anybody be in objection to that? Does anybody want to sit through that torture session for another 3.5 hours? No, thank you. I've had enough of those for one lifetime.
Right. So, Michigan, they had their game canceled against the Maryland Terrapins this upcoming Saturday. So they'll rest and then they'll get whooped again by the Ohio State Buckeyes in the quarantine Columbus Horseshoe next week, Saturday, probably at noon on Fox or something like that. But anyway, that's because their practice facilities were closed due to COVID-19 concerns and cases, may I add. Not good. But in other words, Jim Harbaugh, karma's a bitch, isn't it? So transitioning to college basketball, the Michigan State Spartans men's basketball team beat the Duke Blue Devils 75-69 at Cameron Indoor Stadium in the State Farm Champions Classic. The Spartans were 8th ranked going in. The Duke Blue Devils were 6th ranked going in. Rocket Watts, 20 points. Joey Hauser, a standout center in my eyes at least, 11 points and 10 rebounds. Malik Hall, 10 and 10. The Spartans had 2 double-double players. The team played great defense as well for most of the game and made great plays. They weren't perfect. They made some mistakes, but it was a tough neck-and-neck battle. The Spartans trailed by as many as 10 early in the first half, but throughout the second half, they led by as many as 16. Wowzers! Against Duke! First time Izzo has beaten Duke at Cameron Indoor Stadium on Mike Krzyzewski's home court. Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. How impressive is that?
Impressive enough to where it needs recognition, whether it be fans or no fans, COVID or no COVID. That is a flat-out difficult place to play in. Duke is known, gets its reputation just basically from that gym floor alone. That was quite impressive that, while they were down early, they first closed the gap with a 13-4 run to close out that first half, and then they went on the run that they had with basically vintage Izzo play. Defense, rebounding, toughness, and being smart on offense. And as you can see, it all led out. Aaron Henry with 14 points, 5 boards, 5 assists, and 3 steals. That's an all-around game. You mentioned Joey Hauser and Malik Hall, the work they had done. And that's to counteract the job that Duke had gotten from guys like Matthew Hurt with 21 points. It helps that Jalen Johnson was only held to just, 11 points. And this is freshman coming off of a 24-point debut. So another big credit to the MSU defense for stepping up and making the right stops and right adjustments when they had to make them. It seems like a simple, prototypical signature out-of-conference win for Izzo that I think if you are a team that wants to have aspirations of wanting more than just getting to the Sweet 16 or getting to the second or third weekend in March, if they do have a March Madness this time around, because remember, they had to cancel this year for obvious reasons. But if you're seeing possible Final Four national title aspirations, this was a promising sign, a promising victory, if there ever was one, if you're an MSU fan that has those reasonably high expectations every year.
Yeah, true. Frank, man, you got to be happy about that one, don't you?
Oh, yes, I am very happy. I mean, look, I know there's going to be people that say, oh, the Cameron crazies weren't there. There was no fans.
Right, that doesn't matter.
How many times look, you want to play that game? how many times has Michigan State beaten Duke when they've come to the Breslin Center and they've had their own fans behind them? The answer is 0. So the way I see it, a win over Duke is a win over Duke, fans or no fans in attendance. And it was just as impressive, too. I mean, when I was watching the game early on, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, here we go again, and we're going to get stomped by Duke. And you know what? They got down by 10 points early on. A lesser Michigan State team probably would have said, you know what? We can't beat these guys. We're done. This team didn't do that. They manned up and responded.
They never gave up.
13-4 run, and then pretty much in the second half.
They showed character.
It was. Yeah, you're right, Ed. And you know what? I'll even make mention of this, too. In that second half, it looked like that they were out there running the old shell drill on defense. They did a great job cutting the seams, checking out, rebounding, contesting shots. That's stuff that I love to see because one guy who I coach basketball with is a defensive wizard, and he preaches that stuff every day at practice, and I happen to believe in the same things as well. So, that said, all-around great defense performance. Holding Jalen Johnson to 11 after he had 19-19 double-double. And also DJ Stewart, who had 24 points off the bench in his first game. No field goals in the entire game. That's an even bigger accomplishment defensively. And on the offensive side, you mentioned Rocket Watson, his 20 points. Malik Hall had 10-10 double-double. How about Julius Marble, 12 points? And I think Marble is kind of a forgotten guy in MSU's rotation. I mean, there was times where he'd have a game here or there where he'd score. But I think he really showed what he's capable of doing, especially in a big game like this. And I know one quote he had after they asked him about a donkey, he said, it felt good to do that at Duke because I kind of hate them. So, you know what? All in all, great showing by Michigan State. I think this very well could be a special team. I know it's only November, and you can't win a championship in November, but you know what? You can at least show what sort of medal you have at that point in time. So let's just hope I can only hope that they can do this come January, February, and into March, and possibly April as well. Only time will tell, but like I said, a win over Duke is a win over Duke.
Definitely. A win's a win, all right. A very tough, hard-fought win against those Duke Blue Devils, coached by the great Mike Krzyzewski, for crying out sideways. Wow. So, the Michigan Wolverines men's basketball team, they won in overtime 81-71 over the Oakland Grizzlies. Juwan Howard and Isaiah Livers got into a heated argument during a timeout with 3:43 left in the first half. Michigan let Oakland hang around. Oakland had several leads in the game, but in overtime, Michigan pulled away. Even Michigan never gave up on their game. So then tonight, they rolled over Ball State, the Cardinals from the Mid-American Conference, 84-65. They led by as many as, say, like 25 or so in that game, especially in the second half. But I think Michigan Wolverines had the better game tonight rather than the game on Sunday night. Both games were at home. Ed, we'll start with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, far better control in this one that they had in their previous outing against Oakland. But I think Oakland was an example of sometimes teams are not going to just roll over and die for you. They're going to give you their best effort, and you got to come prepared. Because remember, Michigan was a bit of an overachieving team last season, and people were wondering, we're probably picking them as a potential dark horse run in the tournament had it not been for COVID. So you got to know with this team coming in, the expectations are, okay, let's see what you can build upon from last season. Know that other teams are going to be giving you their best shot week in and week out, or game in and game out. And we saw that from Oakland, who was no pushover. We've seen the teams that come up there. We've seen the coaches that have been there consistently throughout the years that have kept the players in line with their system. So you know they're going to give it their all, and they made Michigan earn this one. I think you need to see moments of adversity to see what a team can overcome, such as not just that scenario, but also with Isaiah Livers and Juwan Howard going at it. You need moments like this to prove your mettle. Show your adversity. And I think Michigan showed that in one instance, and then they showed how well they can recover and not something like that linger on into the next game by the way they'd handle business tonight, with Isaiah Livers getting 21 points on 8-11 shooting, with Hunter Dickinson getting his first career double-double. That was what you wanted and needed to see, and a very good showing. Now, let's see how it goes from here because they got one more game left before conference play starts, and it's part of the ACC Big Ten Challenge, so you want to represent and look good for the conference there. Let's see what they do against NC State, but first things first, still got to take care of business against UCF.
Yes, definitely. Frank, your thoughts on Michigan?
Obviously, they handled their business against Ball State, who I guess is not anywhere near as good of a program in the MAC as BG is, who Michigan beat in their season opener. And, of course, as for that close win against Oakland, I mean, I can either look at it one of two ways. One, that was just one of those blip-on-the-radar games that happens once in a while. Or two, Oakland has a chip on their shoulder, and that's the typical Greg Campy coach team where you go against the big-name in-state schools and you want to basically play out your ass and give it everything you got and hopefully you steal a win. I've seen many times my Spartans have gone to play Oakland and had to survive close ones. Heck, I was actually at one of those games back in 2017 at Little Caesars Arena. But, they went out and took care of their business like they should have done. And as for the Isaiah Livers and Juwan Howard dust-up, I mean, that's really no different than Tom Izzo and Aaron Henry getting into it a couple of years ago at the NCAA tournament. Coaches will do that to players if you're not doing what's asked of you to be done. So I think that's just another coach and player having a moment, but then everything gets smoothed out and everything's nice and smooth and goes as planned. And as for the rest of the way, I know UCF, they'll have to end up facing. I think they'll take care of them. I mean, NC State will be a bit of a challenge in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. They're a decent program, so we'll see how things go there before Big Ten play opens up.
Yeah, Dickinson proved to be a really good center. Isaiah Livers, 21 points, 2 assists, 3 blocks. Dickinson, I saw, reached up and swatted a shot within his own post. That's what a center really does. I don't know if Dickinson's listed as a center or not, but he's a center in my eyes as well, just like Joey Hauser for Michigan State. There's a comparison for you guys. That takes care of college basketball. Now to the NBA. In the pros, the Pistons have waived guard Zaire Smith and agreed with 2019 37th overall draft pick guard forward Davidas Servidis on a 3-year contract, according to Adrian Wojnarowski. They signed guard LiAngelo Ball to a non-guaranteed 1-year deal. Also, 48 of 546 NBA players have tested positive for COVID-19, which is almost a significant number, but I'm not really sure about whether or not it's high or low. But anyway, then one headline before we go to the closing statement and crystal ball segment. The Tigers have tendered a contract each to pitcher Matt Boyd and other unsigned players on the team. So the Tigers, with their new manager, A.J. Hinch, guys, they're going to have to start developing starting pitchers like Matt Boyd, Tariq Skubal, and Casey Mize. Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely agree. At least if you're A.J. Hinch, you're coming to a situation where you have some promising pieces like Mize, like Spencer Turnbull, like Manning, like others, Boyd, other young players on this squad to where you can go somewhere with this team. So I think it'll be a process. We just mentioned that word, speaking of that, not too long ago. But in all legitimate terms here, this will be a more complete process than what we're actually seeing, or what we had seen the past few years. I believe that to be the case here. As for the Pistons, I think for more so, it's not so much the fact that they made this move for depth purposes. I think this should be more attributed to how, like where you like him or not, LeVar Ball deserves some type of credit for essentially manifesting this into destiny of how he got all 3 of his sons by hook or by crook into the NBA. So I think that alone deserves some type of credit and kudos of its own, especially, for a black father to be able to do this for his sons deserves a lot of credit. And knowing the fact that he's still taking care of his wife who's been recovering for a stroke as well. Props to LeVar Ball on this one as well.
Yeah, his little brother, LiAngelo Ball, has made it to the NBA, by the way. Yes.
His son, his other son, yeah.
His son, thank you. So his son, LiAngelo Ball, has made it to the NBA. So there you go. So first our closing statement, then our crystal ball. Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. Closing statement. Go ahead.
Well, basically, it's funny that you mention it, because the way I'm going to describe it is going to essentially combine the closing statement into a crystal ball. The first step was done, and the right step was done and needed to be done in regards to getting rid of Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn. It was long overdue, and frankly, it should have happened a long time ago. But if you're Sheila Ford Ham, you have to recognize and understand that there's more that needs to be done. More changes have to be made. And if you're completely honest and deep down you know it has to be talked about at the very least, you got to start weighing the possibility of saying goodbye to Matthew Stafford. I myself probably don't want to see it because I've long imagined of him being the guy who would take us to that next level, but it's clearly evident and obvious at this point we have wasted so much of his career to a point where I don't know if he's going to make a return to at least his somewhat reliable self from a couple years back. I don't know if the weight of trying to carry this franchise and team on his back for so long has broken him to a point to where he may not be his full compatible self anymore. That still yet remains to be seen. But I do believe that change of scenery is in fact necessary for Matthew Stafford. I don't know where the team is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be Denver. I don't know if it's going to be New York. I don't even know if it's going to be Dallas. The possibilities are endless. But what I do know for certain in terms of body language, tone, and other factors as well, knowing that he's going to be undergoing another coaching change in less than 5 years here, or so years. It's just time. It's long past time. It is an uncomfortable truth and an uncomfortable prospect to look at, but I think the reality is here, it is time to say goodbye to Matthew Stafford. And my crystal ball here would be, since it may cost less money this time around, and knowing that you just got rid of your head coach and your GM, it wouldn't surprise me if by the time next season rolls around, the Matthew Stafford era will have come to an end in Detroit.
All right. Frank, your closing statement. Go ahead.
My closing statement / crystal ball happens to be about the University of Michigan football team. I think we have now seen that Jim Harbaugh has become enamored with his own past and his mentor, Bo Schembechler, way too much. When, in reality, the guy who did so well at Stanford and with the San Francisco 49ers isn't there anymore. I've said that before. But also, you look at Michigan's team and coaches, they look like they've checked out. And they look like they don't care anymore. In fact, it's almost looking like John L. Smith days at Michigan State, where there's infighting amongst the staff. I mean, there hasn't been a moment where Harbaugh has smacked himself at a press conference or told the media to smile or anything like that. But the truth is, things are getting ugly right now. And with the way the rest of the Big Ten East is shaping up, you see what Mel Tucker is starting to do at Michigan State. I mean, it's going to take time, but he's getting things going. You've seen Greg Schiano getting Rutgers into being a decent team. And, of course, at Maryland, who Michigan was supposed to play this weekend, but isn't, Mike Loxley is getting something going there. And, of course, obviously Penn State and James Franklin has got things going, even though it's been a lot of bad luck for him. And, of course, Ohio State is Ohio State. So, as for Michigan, a change has to happen. If it doesn't, the rest of the Big Ten East is going to blow right by you. And rock bottom is not a place you want to be. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Michigan State fan. There may or may not be a small part of me that would gloat and laugh to see you down there. But I'm just going to be truthful. You need to make a change. I'm not saying that Harbaugh is going to be fired, but I think he's got to walk away. There needs to be a new voice in there, but it also has to be letting go of your past, letting go of Bo Schembechler and doing things his way. Going the whole Michigan man mantra, you got to let go of that. Alabama did when they brought Nick Saban in 2007, and look where it's gotten them.
Multiple national championships.
Exactly, Taylor. The moral of the story, don't hang on to the past too long. You'll never have a bright future. And as for my crystal ball, I said it, Harbaugh's going to walk away on his own. Where he ends up, I don't know. But he's going to have to walk away, and who knows what will happen for Michigan after that.
Which leads to my closing statement. The Lions had better not hire Jim Harbaugh as their next head coach. He may have had some success in the NFL with the 49ers in the past, but he's a liar to the media. He's been that way for Michigan, and he's not smart. He's not a smart head coach for Michigan. In fact, he pouts way too much, way too rapidly. As for the Lions, by the way, as far as the draft is concerned, either keep tanking for Justin Fields, otherwise trade up. There's another option for you. For my crystal ball, I see Michigan missing out on a bowl game for the first time since 2014 before Brady Hoke was fired. So there you go. Before we go, we want to remind everyone to download the all-new social sports app called Big It, which influences more and more people to love sports. Enter the referral code STABLES with a capital S and the letter B in the middle when you sign up. Available on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Download the Big It app and sign up with the referral code STABLES with a capital S and the letter B in the middle. Gentlemen, excellent job as always. That concludes another fine episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, Prime Time Edition on Stables Media. We'll be back next week. For Ed Smith, Frank Vasner, this is Taylor Phillips signing off. Follow me on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at DT2Phillips with 2 L's. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at EdSmith313. And follow Frank Vasner on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Frank_Vasner, VAJCNER. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. GTFN. Ta-ta for now. Power to the people. Hit them with a hind. We rest our case. Stay safe. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them. And it is for every sports fan's own good because the truth is out there.